The Where Our Minds Wander podcast may contain sensitive content and explicit language. Listener discretion is advised. Greetings, fellow wanderers, to the places our minds wander.
The house at the end of the dirt road, where disembodied voices whisper and strange sounds make the living shiver.
Where shadows lurk at the edge of the woods, just outside your back door. And mysterious lights speed beyond reason across the clear night sky.
Odd events throughout time that lead you down the rabbit hole.
I'm Wes.
And I'm Beth.
And this is Where Our Minds Wander. Hello and welcome to Where Our Minds Wander, all you fellow wanderers. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, everybody.
Well, I'm happy to report that I marched through the Valley of Death, took the scenic route, and I finally came out the other side because I'm feeling much better, much more like myself.
Knock on wood.
And for all you Bigfoot lovers out there, Beth and I watched a documentary on Prime last night, and it was free, and it's called A Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed. And it was really, really good. Very well done.
Yeah.
Nothing hokey about it. Just people's experiences.
And then different experts weighing in, too.
Well, the experts. You see this? Air quotes.
Right. Yeah, but some of them are very respected people.
Everybody on that last night for witnesses, I 100% believed.
Yeah, it was very, very well done.
Yeah. They had stories from loggers and campers. Yeah, it was very well done. And I got to say, I already kind of believed in Bigfoot as it is. And I was thinking to myself the whole time, there's no reason Bigfoot can't exist out there just because we only get glimpses of them. I mean, we have Mr. Chonkers, our hamster, and we know he's in there, but we only see him maybe once a month.
I know. We saw him last night, and I think I scared him because I walked in and he was just happily eating away, and then he froze.
Yeah, did the whole statue thing, like, they don't see me.
Yeah.
Then he slowly made his way over and made his way into his burrow.
Yeah.
He burrowed down through his little,
hole in the ground?
Yeah. And he disappeared.
He did. He was there 1 second, and then, shoop, he was gone.
We'll see him again maybe next month.
If we're lucky.
It's been a whole month and a half since I've seen this creature.
I know. We hear him. He doesn't do any wood knocks or anything, but he chomps on his treats and his carrot and all the other goodies we give him every day.
Yeah, he's gotten fat. He's really not getting as much exercise on his wheel as he needs to.
Right.
Well, enough of the silliness. We must get into tonight's episode.
I'm excited about tonight's episode. Just hoping my voice holds out.
Yes, Beth has a bit of a cold coming on, well, because she's going to be on vacation next week.
Right, so of course I'm going to get sick, because that's just the way it goes.
Well, just stay far enough away from me, because I don't want it.
I know. But I am excited about tonight's episode. We've got 2 really cool stories.
Yeah, I kind of read ahead, and this one's perfect for you.
I know.
Your story.
I know.
So take it away.
All right. Well, used bookstores and libraries are 2 of my happy places. I've always loved books, and one of the last times that I moved houses, I had the 30 boxes of books to prove it. The Willard Public Library in Evansville, Indiana, looks like a dream to me. First, it's as Gothic-looking of a building as I've ever seen. And second, it's filled with not just books, but genealogy records and an extensive archive. It was built by a very eccentric and interesting man, which always adds to its allure. For a book nerd and a history nerd like me, there's nothing better. But in the case of the Willard Public Library, it is even better, because the building is allegedly so haunted that they have 6 continuously running security cameras, or ghost cams as they call them, that anyone can watch 24/7.
Yes, and let me just tell you all out there, if you get into this, you'll be sucked in, because my wife watches it every night.
Things change. I'm telling you, there was one box on the table, and I was enamored with this box because they say that things move in this library, unexplained. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if, 1 second the box was closed and then the next second the box was open? So I watched this box for days. And then last night I checked in and there are 6 boxes on the table.
Oh my God, they're multiplying. But they are open during the day and people go in there. Now it's different if it's at night when there's nobody there whatsoever.
Oh yeah, no, I understand that it was humans that put the boxes on the tables. I get that. But just the fact that, there weren't boxes and now, I don't know. I enjoy watching it.
Yeah, and they have quite a few cams set up throughout the place.
Yes. The old guy the other night freaked me right out. He freaked me out because 1 second there was nobody sitting in the chair and the next minute there was an elderly man sitting in the chair.
Well, it was a bit of a glitch in the system.
I'm sure it was, but all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, there's a person sitting in that chair. It was, it's fun to watch, everybody.
So you might want to all check it out. But back to Beth's love of books.
Yes, I'm very excited to dive into the history of the Willard Public Library and the reason for those ghost cams. So I have to start with Willard Carpenter, a man whose life story reads like the great American novel. He was born on my birthday, March 15th, in Stratford, Vermont, in 1803. He grew up on a farm and at a very young age was driving oxen all the way to Tunbridge, a distance of 9 miles, and back to the mill, 8 or 9 months out of the year. The other 3 or 4 months, depending on how long the deep winter lasted, he was allowed to go to school. He lived at home until he was 19, and having saved up $7, he decided to leave the farm and make his fortune. He slung a pack over his back, grabbed a cudgel, otherwise known as a thick wooden club, for protection, and set off on foot. He'd take rides when one was offered, but he mostly walked all the way to Troy, New York, arriving around the time of the Great Fire in 1822. He didn't stay for very long and reached Albany in May of that year. He didn't stay in Albany very long either and set his sights on Buffalo. Before long, he'd decided to keep going, walking all the way to Salem, Ohio, which likely took him about 60 hours. He had an uncle in Salem, so he decided to rest there for a little bit. His first job in Salem was clearing 80 acres of land at $5 an acre. He earned $400. But he wasn't all that fond of clearing forests, and when a teaching job became available, he decided to take it. He was 20 years old. But it turned out that teaching wasn't all that interesting to him either, and he quit after 1 year, taking a job instead learning how to tan leather and make shoes. 6 months in, he decided it just wasn't what he wanted either. He allegedly looked at what the tanner had. Carpenter estimated it was about $7,000 in property, and told the man, not so kindly, that that sort of life just wasn't good enough for him. Carpenter took all of his savings, bought a horse and a silver watch, pocketed the remaining $16, and headed back to New York. Now, I guess Carpenter wasn't quite as clever as he thought he was, because he ended up losing his watch and 15 of his $16 to card sharps. But here's where the great American novelness of his life kicks in. Apparently, the card swindlers felt bad for him and gave him 4 of his dollars back. Carpenter, knocked down a peg or two, continued on to Buffalo, where he got a job floating lumber down the Mohawk River to Schenectady. He was paid $16 a month. However, when he delivered all of the lumber 2 months later, it was discovered that his employer was horribly in debt, and Carpenter didn't receive a single dime of his pay. And since he had left his horse back in Buffalo, he was in a pretty tough spot, totally broke and nowhere to go. And yet, somehow, he managed to get a job building the Erie Canal. Rather than sleep in a shanty with the predominantly Irish workers, Carpenter finagled a deal with a local farmer to let him sleep alone in his barn. 5 months later, he'd made enough money to make his way back to Troy, where he took up teaching once again. But this time, his ability to maintain control was in serious question. Apparently, the school children had quite the reputation, and Carpenter was forced to charge one of them with a fire poker to get them to stand down. With his teaching earnings, he was able to buy 20 acres and plant some corn. In 1824, his father came to visit and offered him his own farm back in Vermont, but Carpenter refused. He also refused his father's gift of $600, saying he'd rather make his fortune himself. Soon after, Carpenter's brother John came to Troy, and the 2 men went into business together as grocers and then dry goods. And finally, Willard Carpenter started making the kind of money that he had always dreamed of. When their younger brother moved to Evansville, Indiana, and invited his 2 older brothers to join him there, Willard and John decided to make the move. Soon, they were titans in the dry goods business. And Willard Carpenter was able to fund the building of the Farmers Hotel, a 50-stall stable, and he accepted a position on the state legislature. Eventually, he also served as county commissioner, financed the building of a bridge, and a poorhouse. And then he got onto the board of directors of the Evansville-Crawfordsville Railroad Enterprise. This led to a long career in railroad financing. Meanwhile, he had gotten married and was the father of 3 children. Willard Carpenter was a well-known figure in Evansville and seemed to relish everything that entailed: the notoriety, the wealth, the prestige, all of the things he decided as a young farm boy back in Vermont that he would have one day. But one thing he kept very quiet was the number of escaped slaves that he was hiding in his house on their journey to freedom. Yep, Willard Carpenter was a station master on the Underground Railroad. Like I said, great American novel.
This guy's incredible.
He is. All right, so in 1876, Willard Carpenter set up an endowment fund for a public library to be built in Evansville. He hired James W. Reed to design the Gothic Revival-style building on land that Carpenter donated to the town. Ground was broken in 1877, and Carpenter hoped that he would see it finished in his lifetime. It was not. Willard Carpenter passed away in 1883. The library was completed in 1885. 1 year later, Carpenter's daughter, Louise, sued the town of Evansville, saying that the town had taken advantage of her father and that she was the rightful heir of all of his property and money. The court ruled that Carpenter was of sound mind, and that just because Louise was feeling snubbed by her father, she wasn't going to get her way. Over the next 125 years, the Willard Public Library became the home for genealogy records, which is one of my favorite things to look at, an extensive local history section, and an archive for many important books and documents, as well as maintaining a collection of all the latest publications. And over the years, there have been many noteworthy librarians and staff. 2 beloved librarians were Otilda Gosley and Margaret Meyer. According to the Willard Public Library official website, Gosley was known for her warm and friendly service. She passed away at age 76 in 1919. Meyer, known to everyone as Miss Margaret, was the children's librarian for 50 years. She passed away in 1989. Now, here's where my rather embarrassing childhood terror of libraries comes into play, because I've mentioned before that when I was little, Ghostbusters scared the crap out of me, and that my parents had to leave the theater with me when the librarian did her shushing and turned into the ghosty skeleton thing. So, in 1937, a night janitor was entering the Willard Public Library basement to stoke the coal furnace around 3 a.m. when he came face to face with an all-gray lady with gray shoes and a gray veil over her face. He was so startled by her that he dropped his flashlight, and as soon as the beam hit the floor, the lady dissolved into nothing. And sometime during Miss Margaret's 50-year tenure, she claimed that she saw the gray lady as well. Now, I don't have specific dates, but the library's official website lists the following encounters. Lecturers visiting from the University of Southern Indiana reported seeing the gray lady, as did a visitor who swore that they saw her while they were in the elevator. A local weathercaster also claimed to have encountered her. In addition, 2 policemen responding to a library security alarm swore that they saw 2 apparitions standing in one of the upstairs windows. The last in-person sighting of the gray lady was in 2010, when the assistant children's librarian spotted her in the basement hallway. But that doesn't mean that the gray lady isn't there anymore. Quite the opposite, because now I'm going to get to those 6 ghost cams that I mentioned. Well, the Gray Lady has been caught on camera numerous times. And I'll include the link to a News Channel 14 article from 2013 that has 3 photos of the Gray Lady that I think are worth checking out. One of them is very compelling, and it shows a full-body apparition of an entirely gray, transparent woman walking past the library stacks. Another one that I found shows the same full-bodied apparition, a transparent female, entirely gray figure, and she's walking up the stairs. And you all can watch all 6 live feeds from all 6 ghost cams anytime you want. I did put the link in the show notes, but you could also Google it for yourself. Just Google Willard Public Library ghost cams and they all come up. And, like my husband mentioned, I got a little addicted to them. Other things that the library claims that they've experienced are faucets turning off and on by themselves, and the heavy scent of perfume that seems to come out of nowhere. But they also have reports of objects and furniture moving on their own and discovering, quote, odd items that show up that weren't there at closing time. It was a little maddening to me that I couldn't find anything specific about what these odd objects have been, but that's what they say. And finally, there have been reports of people feeling their hair and their earrings being pulled or touched. Now, as far as who this mysterious Gray Lady could be, nobody really knows for sure. Although the overall feeling is that it's not former head librarian Otilda Gosley, who passed away in 1919. People tend to believe that it's actually Louise Carpenter, begrudgingly walking the halls of the library, angered by the fact that her father Willard left her nothing. But that doesn't explain the 2 apparitions the policemen saw in the window. So it is possible that one of the former librarians, or any former staff really, could also be there. I highly recommend checking out those ghost cams, especially at night after the library is closed. I'm just saying. They're pretty cool.
Well, I kind of like the fact that he didn't leave her anything. Her father left her nothing.
I know. He didn't leave any of his children anything.
And I kind of like the fact that the judge more or less said, suck it up. That's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
Because she sounds a little entitled to me.
That is how she is portrayed, yes. But I did do some digging because I wanted to find out more, of course. And I couldn't find any explanation for why he chose not to leave them anything or what his children's personalities were like. So I don't really know.
Well, perhaps he figured he made it on his own, his way. I mean, this guy, he really did do a lot. I mean, he went from one place to the next, trying out different jobs, only to finally find out that this is what he's into, the dry goods.
Mm-hmm.
And he made his fortune there.
I know. And
how noble.
And he walked all the way from Vermont to Ohio. He walked.
They were a different breed back then.
I know.
People were just hardy.
I know.
Hungry.
Yep.
That's how they made their fortunes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then he gave back to the community.
Well, that he did.
Mm-hmm.
I can understand why he'd want to give back. He put all this money in. He worked hard for his money. And he built something that he would love. It's too bad he couldn't have seen it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'd be phenomenal if he was actually haunting the place.
That would be cool. I think the house is a business now, his house. I can't remember if it's a radio station. It's some kind of business. So maybe next I'll look into whether they say that the former house is haunted. Maybe he's there.
It could very well be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the other two might be the librarians.
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't you? I mean, they were definitely 50 years into your job.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you spent a lot of time there. Why wouldn't you want to spend eternity there?
I know, if it's what you love. And that building is beautiful.
I love hauntings in libraries.
I know.
It's better than asylums or anything else like that.
I know. It really is.
Well, excellent story. Go check out the link if you're interested.
I'm excited for your story, so let's get to our break.
Well, we'll continue on with my story after this quick Who'da Thunk It.
Hey, did you know? The Beach Boys song Never Learn Not to Love has a pretty interesting backstory. Brian Wilson bought the rights to the song from an aspiring songwriter for some cash and a motorcycle. But when the Beach Boys changed some of the lyrics, the songwriter wasn't too happy and sent the band a single bullet as a warning. The song was originally titled Cease to Exist, by the way, and when the Beach Boys released it, they didn't give the songwriter any credit. For good reason, I suppose, since it was written by none other than Charles Manson. Who'da thunk it?
All right, we are back from the break, and I'm going to tell all you fellow wanderers about some high strangeness that took place over Warminster, England. The historic market town of Warminster, England, is in Wiltshire, on the western edge of the Salisbury Plain, about a 25-minute drive from Stonehenge. And on early Christmas morning 1964, some pretty strange things started happening there. And the strangeness lasted for years to come. According to vocalmedia.com, it all began around 1:25 a.m. on Christmas morning, when seamstress Mildred Head was woken up by what sounded like hundreds of twigs scraping against her roof tiles. As she lay there, the sound intensified into what she thought was hail, but giant hail. She got out of bed to look out the window, expecting to see a terrible storm, but instead she saw nothing. Everything looked completely calm outside. Suddenly, the hail stopped and was replaced by a loud hum that was so powerful that she covered her ears and felt momentarily paralyzed. Eventually, the hum faded away to a, quote, faint whisper. Around the same time, at nearby Nook Camp, also known as Lark Hill, 30 soldiers with the Royal Welsh Battalion heard an even more alarming noise. They described it as if one of the chimney stacks had been ripped off the roof, pulverized, and then massive chunks of masonry were flung to the ground. According to mentalfloss.com, a few hours later, around 6:30 a.m., Postmaster Roger Rump and his wife woke up in Warminster to a similar sound, as if, quote, 5,000 tiles on our roof were being ripped off and then put back down again with an enormous clatter. It was followed by a humming sound. At the same time, or maybe 15 minutes or so earlier, a woman named Marjorie By was walking to the Holy Communion at Christ Church. It was still dark out, and the sky was perfectly clear and full of stars. She thought that it was a bit odd that she could hear what sounded like a truck dropping loads of gravel on Bell Hill. But the sound shifted into what she described as, quote, distant echoes of crackling laughter steadily increasing in volume. As she got closer to the church, the sound intensified and felt as if it passed directly over her head. It was so intense that she felt shock waves and she couldn't move. She said it was like, quote, sudden vibrations came overhead with chilling intensity, pounding at her neck and head and shoulders, and she felt, quote, pinned down by invisible fingers of sound. 27 additional people in Warminster reported similar sounds that morning. The residents of Warminster were understandably alarmed, and although the military denied causing the incidents, which they still deny to this day, the locals chalked it up as some sort of military operation. Life in Warminster returned to normal, although the incident certainly wasn't forgotten. But little did they know, there was more to come. In February of 1965, scientist David Holton in nearby Cockertown claimed that after a high-pitched sound filled the air, an entire flock of pigeons fell out of the sky and landed dead in his garden of 5 Ash Lane. People didn't know what to call the thing that was invading their skies, and reporter Arthur Shuttlewood was the first to call the thing the Warminster thing. And the thing was now infecting all kinds of animals. On March 17th, locals reported their livestock and their pets were acting nervous, showing signs of panic and even getting injured by sound waves. Like Joan Brown, who said after her entire house quivered under a wave of sound, her cat threw up. On March 25th, according to vocalmedia.com, Ted and Gwen Davies were eating breakfast when they heard what sounded like dozens of birds flapping their wings, and then a crackling sound near their chimney. Then a metallic grinding noise filled the air, and the roof began shaking, and their windows rattled like a hurricane-force wind was hitting them. They ran outside to a perfectly calm and clear day. A day later, Eric Payne was dropping his girlfriend off in Sutton Valley, 3 miles outside of Warminster. A whistling noise started that turned into a buzzing so powerful that it flattened the tops of the trees on both sides of the road. Later that night, a Mr. and Mrs. Marson heard a, quote, great bouncing and bumping noise over their heads as if a load of stones was being tipped onto their roof. Right before that, the same weird crackling and high-pitched whistling filled the air. The Warminster thing didn't seem to be letting up. And then on May 19th, 1965, a woman named Hilda Hebdage came forward and said that she believed she had actually seen the thing. It was cigar-shaped, silver, and covered in blinking gold and yellow lights. She didn't just see it once, she saw it twice. That summer on June 3rd, more than 20 people claimed that they saw the thing too. The first to make a report was Patricia Phillips, who said she and her family witnessed a horizontal cigar-shaped glow in the sky for a solid 25 minutes. It was a fiery red-orange. It was 8:30 p.m. Harold and Dora Horlock saw 2 identical red-hot pokers hanging vertically in the sky, one on top of the other, with a black space in between them. Later that night, at least 17 more people, many of whom were actually hanging out together, saw the same cigar-shaped craft a little south of Warminster in Shearwater. One witness, Colin Hampton, was so surprised by it that he actually fell into the lake.
Oh my gosh! Splash.
Yep. I take it some drinking might have been going on.
Yes.
All 17 witnesses said it was either orange-red or orange-mauve in color. Even a vicar and his family reported seeing the craft that summer.
And they probably were not drinking.
More than likely not, or if they were, it was probably wine.
Right.
August 10th was another day of multiple sightings. Truck driver Terry Pell and his family were traveling near Callaway Clump, an ancient site. Pell said that, out of nowhere, a fiery red orb dropped down into his path, not 50 yards in front of him. He slammed on the brakes to avoid hitting it. The orb hovered, then shot backwards away from them. Pell hit the gas and followed it, going about 30 miles per hour, but before he could catch up to it, it shot upwards and vanished. An Army major was also driving past Callaway Clump on his way back to his barracks after a family gathering, when his car actually stopped dead in the middle of the road. The air outside filled with a loud droning sound, which made his head feel like it might explode. Once the droning went away, his car turned back on as if nothing had ever happened. According to JAHernandez.com, a woman named Rachel Atwell was in bed that night when a pulsating light woke her up. It was hovering about 600 feet above the ground and causing terrible pressure in her head as it droned on and on. By the end of August, the people of Warminster had had enough, and the town called a public meeting. 300 people showed up, hoping the town officials would give them some sort of answer or explanation. Was it the military or not? There was no answer or explanation. 2 days after the meeting, on August 29th, young factory worker Gordon Faulkner took a picture of the thing. He said that when he spotted it, it wasn't making any sound at all, and he was shocked that he actually got a photo of it, since it was moving so fast. The Warminster Journal and then the Daily Mirror published his photo. The interesting thing about Faulkner's photo is that the craft doesn't look like a cigar at all. It actually looks like a classic flying saucer. Although I could see how at the right angle, it might appear more cigar-shaped than a dome saucer. The other unfortunate thing about his photo, at least the ones online, doesn't show any trees or fences or landmarks. So it's difficult to get an idea of the craft's size. But the craft itself certainly looks authentic. By 1966, due to widespread press coverage and a BBC special documentary about the Warminster thing, the town found itself faced with thousands of UFO enthusiasts and curious tourists. According to mentalfloss.com, over 8,000 people flooded into town just during the month of August. Journalist Arthur Shuttlewood became a full-blown champion of the Warminster thing, spending countless hours interviewing witnesses and doing his best to get to the bottom of it all. He published countless articles. Sightings actually slowed down during this period, and it seemed like all the attention had actually driven the thing away. The next major sighting wasn't until October of 1967, when two police officers, Roger Willey and Clifford Waycott, reported seeing something very unusual. They were investigating some local robberies in the Hatherleigh, Devon area, roughly 112 miles away from Warminster. While on patrol, they noticed a stationary, bright, cross-shaped or diamond-shaped light in the sky. It was just hovering there. They decided to drive towards it, and as they approached, the object suddenly shut off, going about 90 miles per hour towards Warminster. By 1970, the Warminster thing seemed to have moved on, or at least it had stopped bothering the people of Warminster. The tourists and UFO seekers went home, and the media stopped making a fuss. And to this day, the military still hasn't admitted to having anything to do with any of it. Skeptics of it all like to use that age-old explanation of mass hysteria. Some suggest that it was all a hoax to bring money into the town. One thing that the vocalmedia.com site points out is that it was later proven that the flock of pigeons that landed dead in scientist David Holton's garden actually happened a full 8 months before Christmas Day of 1964, And they suggest that Shuttlewood purposely confused the dates to add excitement to his news articles. They also question whether other parts of his articles were confused or even exaggerated. So, perhaps they were, or perhaps they weren't. But the Warminster thing is still a great story and still makes for a great mystery.
That's unfortunate that he may have had the dates wrong on that one thing, because then it does kind of call into question the credibility of all of the things that he wrote, unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
But there were so many witness accounts. And they're not all from Arthur Shuttlewood articles.
No. So, it really doesn't mean that these other witness accounts were not trustworthy.
Right.
It just means that, well, he was a bit of a douchebag and made some things up.
Right.
But to me, that doesn't cancel out everybody else's experiences.
No. I do tend to lean more towards a military experiment, though. I mean, if they were experimenting with sound,
yeah,
you know,
it could quite possibly be. But we weren't there.
No.
And I can't say otherwise. But
no.
It's a good theory. I'm sure many are out there.
Yeah.
Lots of theories.
Well, it's also interesting that they saw two completely different spacecraft, too.
Right.
They saw the cigar and then they saw the cross or diamond-shaped thing. Totally different.
Yeah. Could very well be some secret military project.
It's interesting.
Very interesting.
A great story.
Well, if you'd like to know more
about the Willard Public Library or about the Warminster thing, you can always check our sources in our show notes.
Yeah. And while you're doing that, head on over to your favorite listening platform and leave us a rating and a comment. We'd appreciate it.
Yes, please.
Join us again next week for an all-new episode of Where Our Minds Wander.
See you soon. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to traveling with you again to the places where our minds wander.
If you like what you heard, please take a moment and provide us with a 5-star rating and a comment on your favorite listening platform. It really helps us move up the list and become more visible on the podcast charts so new people can find us.
And thank you all for your continued support.
See you next week for an all-new episode.